Welcome, Whispering Bee family. Today, we're diving into a story that proves not all endings are loud. Some are devastatingly quiet. What happens when the one person holding everything together simply stops? No arguments, no warnings, no goodbye. Just silence. And the slow, inevitable collapse of everything they once took for granted. Because sometimes, the strongest move isn't fighting back. It's stepping away and letting everything reveal its true weight without you. And by the time they realize what they've lost, there's nothing left to fix. Stay with us to witness how the moment she lost it all was the moment she finally found herself. Claire noticed the lipstick first. A smudge of coral pink on the collar of Daniel's white shirt, carelessly tossed into the hamper like it was nothing, like it meant nothing. Not her shade. She never wore coral. The warm tones clashed with her cool undertones, something Daniel used to tease her about when they first started dating. He would bring her lipsticks in shades of rose and mauve, learning her preferences, memorizing the small details that made her feel seen. That was 7 years ago. A lifetime ago. The color drained from her face as she stood there in their bedroom, the bedroom they had painted together on a rainy Saturday 2 years into their marriage. Soft gray walls, white trim, a compromise between her love of calm neutrals and his preference for bold colors. Everything in their life had been a compromise. She was only now realizing that most of the compromising had been hers. Her hands trembled as she set the shirt down and walked to the bathroom. She gripped the edges of the marble sink, the one they had splurged on during the renovation, and stared at her reflection. 28 years old, 5 years of marriage, 7 years together total. 7 years of building a life together, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. 7 years of being the glue that held not just their relationship, but his entire family together. And now this. A coral pink smudge that shattered everything. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later in the shower where the water could wash them away, where no one could hear her. Instead, she went downstairs and made herself a cup of tea. Earl Grey with honey, the way her grandmother had taught her. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they had shared 1,000 meals, made 1,000 plans, and did what she always did. She thought things through. Claire had always been the practical one. While Daniel dreamed big and took risks, she built the foundation. She was the architect of their life, drawing blueprints while he painted murals on the walls. She was the one who balanced their accounts down to the penny, managed their investments with the precision of a chess master, and quietly fixed problems before they became disasters. She was also the one who had introduced Daniel's struggling tech startup to her college friend Marcus, whose venture capital firm eventually invested $2 million. That investment saved the company and turned it into what it was today, a thriving business with 30 employees and contracts across 3 states. But it wasn't just about money. Money was the easy part. Claire had woven herself into every aspect of their lives like golden thread through fabric, holding everything together with such skill that no one even noticed the stitching. She organized the family gatherings that kept Daniel's parents, Richard and Patricia, connected to their 3 sons. She remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every important date that the men in the family seemed constitutionally incapable of tracking. She knew that Richard liked his coffee with 2 sugars, but no cream, that Patricia preferred white flowers over colored ones, that James was allergic to shellfish, that Connor's daughter was afraid of dogs. She was the one who sat with Patricia during her chemotherapy appointments 2 years ago, holding her hand through every session while Daniel was busy closing deals. 8 sessions spread over 4 months. Claire had driven Patricia to every single one, brought her ginger tea for the nausea, rubbed her feet when they cramped from the medication. She had been there when Patricia lost her hair, helping her pick out scarves and wigs, making her laugh when all she wanted to do was cry. Daniel had visited twice. Twice in 4 months. Both times he had stayed less than an hour, uncomfortable with the hospital smell, fidgeting with his phone. The next morning, Claire woke up to find Daniel already gone. A text message on her phone read, "Early meeting, love you." Love you? The words felt hollow now, like an echo in an empty house. How many times had he typed those words while texting someone else? How many times had he said them to her face while thinking of another woman? She got dressed carefully, choosing a navy dress that made her feel professional and powerful. She needed armor today. She went to work at the nonprofit where she served as director of operations. It was a job she loved, helping women rebuild their lives after domestic violence and abuse. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, counseling other women to recognize their worth, to see the red flags, to understand that they deserved better. And yet, she had missed the signs in her own marriage. Or maybe she had seen them and chosen to look away. That evening, Daniel came home with flowers, roses, her favorite, or at least what used to be her favorite. He had stopped asking what she liked years ago, assuming he already knew everything about her. He kissed her cheek, his lips barely grazing her skin, and asked about her day with the distracted air of someone going through motions. Claire smiled and told him about a successful grant application. They ate dinner together. Grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, simple and healthy. They watched television, some crime drama he liked where she had long ago lost track of the plot. They went to bed, sleeping on their respective sides with an ocean of space between them. Everything normal, everything fine. Except it wasn't. Claire lay awake long after Daniel started snoring softly beside her. She thought about their marriage, really examined it for the first time in years. When had they stopped talking about real things? When had their conversations become nothing more than logistics? When had he stopped looking at her like she was someone he wanted to know, instead of someone he already owned? She remembered their wedding day. A small ceremony in her parents' backyard, white chairs on green grass, flowers everywhere. Daniel had cried when she walked down the makeshift aisle, actual tears streaming down his face. He had whispered that she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He had promised to love her, to cherish her, to choose her every day for the rest of his life. What happened to that man? Or had he ever really existed? Had she fallen in love with potential instead of reality? Had she spent a decade trying to turn him into someone he was never going to be? Over the next 2 weeks, Claire paid closer attention. She noticed how Daniel's phone was always face down, how he took calls in the other room, his voice dropping to a murmur she couldn't quite hear. How he started working late on Thursdays, always Thursdays. Every single Thursday for the past 3 months, he came home after 9, smelling of cologne and carrying takeout as an excuse. She noticed the new cologne itself, something woody and expensive that she had never bought him. When she asked about it, he said casually that he had picked it up at the mall. Daniel, who hated shopping, who had to be dragged to stores, who bought all his clothes online. He had gone to the mall for cologne. She noticed the extra care with his appearance. The hair gel he had never used before. The new shirts in colors he had never worn. The gym membership he actually used now, after years of the card collecting dust in his wallet. He was losing weight, tonning up, caring about how he looked in a way he hadn't since their early dating days. She noticed the distance in his eyes even when he was looking right at her, like she was a piece of furniture. Necessary, functional, but not particularly interesting. Not worth really seeing. Claire started checking their phone records online. She found the same number appearing over and over. Dozens of calls, some lasting 30 minutes or more. Text messages exchanged at all hours. She found credit card charges at restaurants they had never been to together, at a hotel across town, at a jewelry store where he had never bought her anything. The evidence piled up like snow in winter, quiet and relentless, until she was buried in it. She could have confronted him. Part of her wanted to throw the phone records in his face, to demand answers, to make him look her in the eyes and admit what he had done. But something held her back. Some instinct told her to wait, to watch, to understand the full scope of the betrayal before making any moves. Then came the family dinner at Richard and Patricia's house. It was a Sunday tradition, the whole family gathering for Patricia's famous pot roast. The recipe had been passed down from Richard's mother, and Patricia guarded it like a state secret. Daniel's brothers, James and Connor, were there with their wives, Lisa and Rebecca. Everyone laughing, talking, sharing stories about their weeks. Later, Claire was in the kitchen, helping Lisa with the dishes even though Lisa insisted she sit down and relax. But Claire needed to move, needed to do something with her hands. She was drying a serving platter when she heard it. The door to Richard's study was slightly ajar, and voices drifted out. Male voices, familiar ones. "You need to be more careful," Richard said, his tone firm but quiet, the voice he used when discussing serious business. "Claire's not stupid." Claire's hands stilled on the dish towel. "I know, Dad, I'm handling it." That was Daniel, sounding defensive, like a teenager caught sneaking out. "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're playing with fire. Sarah's been calling the house phone. What if Claire had answered?" Sarah, so that was her name. The woman had a name now, a shape, an identity. Not just a coral pink smudge, but a person. Sarah. "She won't call again. I told her not to," Daniel said. "You told her," Richard repeated, skepticism heavy in his voice. "Daniel, you need to end this before it destroys your marriage, if Claire finds out." "She won't, and even if she suspects something, she'll never leave. She's too invested in this family, in us, in everything we've built. Where would she even go? Her whole life is here." The platter slipped from Claire's fingers. She caught it before it hit the floor, but barely. The sound of her gasp was soft. "Your father's right, son." Patricia's voice joined the conversation in the study, her voice drifting through the open door. "This girl, this Sarah, she's not worth risking your marriage over. But you're right about one thing. Claire won't leave. She loves us too much. She's practically part of the furniture at this point. Just be smarter about it. Don't leave evidence lying around. Don't let her call the house." The casual cruelty of it hit Claire like a physical blow. The air left her lungs. Her vision narrowed to a pinpoint. They knew. They all knew. And their concern wasn't for her, wasn't about the betrayal or the pain or the shattering of vows. It was about Daniel getting caught, about protecting him, about keeping up appearances, about making sure the furniture stayed in place. Part of the furniture, that's what Patricia had called her. A fixture, a thing. Claire set down the platter with exaggerated care. She walked back into the dining area on autopilot, her face a mask of pleasant neutrality that she had perfected over years of nonprofit work. She finished helping with cleanup, sat through dessert, laughed at Connor's jokes about his disastrous attempt to assemble a bookshelf, complimented Rebecca's new haircut that framed her face beautifully. When Daniel reached for her hand under the table, she let him take it. She even squeezed back. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. Something had broken and rearranged itself into a new shape. Harder, sharper, clearer. That night, lying in bed next to her husband, Claire made a decision. She wouldn't confront him. She wouldn't scream or throw things or demand answers. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break, of watching her fall apart, of confirming their belief that she was too weak, too dependent, too invested to do anything about it. Instead, she would do something far more effective. She would simply stop. Stop holding things together. Stop smoothing things over. Stop being the glue. And then she would watch with clear eyes and a quiet heart as everything fell apart without her. The next morning, Claire began her withdrawal. Quietly, methodically, like removing supports from a building so gradually that no one notices until the whole structure begins to sway, then crack, then crumble. She started keeping a journal, documenting everything. Dates, times, evidence, not for a confrontation, but for a divorce. She met with a lawyer, a woman named Karen who specialized in cases like hers. Karen told her to be strategic, to protect herself financially, to build her case carefully. "You have leverage," Karen said, reviewing the phone records Claire had brought. "But leverage only works if you use it correctly. Don't show your hand too early." Claire nodded. She was good at strategy. She had built an entire business from nothing, after all, even if Daniel had forgotten that. First, the financial contributions. Daniel's company had 3 major clients that Claire had personally referred. One was her former boss at the consulting firm where she'd worked before the nonprofit. Another was a college roommate who now ran a successful marketing agency. The third was her cousin who owned a chain of organic grocery stores. Claire had made introductions, vouched for Daniel's company, built those relationships with her own credibility and connections. She had handed him success on a silver platter. Now she would take it back. She started with her former boss, Jennifer. They met for coffee at their usual spot downtown, a little cafe with mismatched furniture and the best lattes in the city. I need to talk to you about the contract with Daniel's company, Claire said, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, studying Claire's face with the shrewd gaze of someone who had managed teams for 20 years. They'd known each other for 8 years, had worked side by side on projects that had built both their careers. What's going on? I'd prefer if you didn't renew when it comes up. I can recommend another firm, actually a better fit for what you need. Smaller, more specialized, better rates. Claire, that's a $120,000 annual contract. Is everything okay? Did Daniel do something? Claire smiled, the same pleasant smile she'd been wearing for weeks now. It was amazing how much you could hide behind a smile. Everything's fine. I just think it's time for some changes. Trust me on this one. The firm I'm recommending will serve you better. I'll send you their information. Jennifer nodded slowly, her eyes still searching Claire's face. If you say so, you've never steered me wrong before. Send me the referral. One down. Over the next month, Claire had similar conversations. Casual, friendly, never revealing the truth. Her roommate's marketing agency decided to go in a different direction after Claire mentioned some concerns about response times and project management. Her cousin found a competitor who offered better rates and more flexible terms. $300,000 in annual revenue gone, evaporated, like morning mist. Daniel didn't notice at first. The contracts didn't expire immediately, and he was too distracted, too busy with Sarah, to pay attention to the renewals calendar that Claire had always managed for him. That calendar had been her creation, a detailed spreadsheet with color coding and automatic reminders. It had saved him from missing deadlines dozens of times. She simply stopped updating it. She also stopped managing the client database. For years, Claire had maintained detailed notes on every client. Their preferences, their communication styles, their decision-making processes, their birthdays and anniversaries. Information that made Daniel look attentive and thoughtful when really it was Claire doing the work behind the scenes. She stopped adding notes, stopped sending reminder emails, stopped doing the invisible labor that had made him look good. She stopped covering for him too. When clients called the house, she used to take detailed messages, sometimes even handling initial questions herself, smoothing over problems before they reached Daniel. Now, she just said he wasn't available and suggested they try his cell phone. When he missed meetings, something that happened more frequently as he juggled his affair, she didn't call to reschedule or make excuses. She let him face the consequences of his own disorganization. At the same time, Claire began extracting herself from the family dynamics. She'd been the organizer, the glue, the one who made everything run smoothly. Sunday dinners at Patricia and Richard's house had been her idea years ago, a way to keep the family close as everyone got busier with their own lives. She'd been coordinating them ever since, making sure everyone could attend, handling the planning, remembering dietary restrictions, bringing dishes that she knew everyone would love. The first Sunday she didn't send out the reminder texts, only James and his wife showed up. Patricia called Claire, confused and slightly annoyed. "Did you forget to tell everyone about dinner?" Patricia asked. Claire took a breath, centered herself. "Oh, I've just been so busy at work. I'm sure Daniel mentioned it to you." "Well, no, he didn't. We're used to you handling these things." "I understand. I just have a lot on my plate right now. I got a promotion last week, and the new responsibilities are pretty demanding. Maybe Daniel can take over coordinating from now on." There was a pause. Claire could almost hear Patricia's thoughts rearranging. "I suppose that makes sense. You do so much already. Congratulations on the promotion, dear." Dear, the endearment felt like acid on an open wound. But Daniel didn't take over. He forgot entirely. The next Sunday, no one showed up except Claire and Daniel, and only because Patricia had called them directly, hurt in her voice. The Sunday after that, only Connor remembered. The family tradition that had lasted 7 years, that had survived holidays and illnesses and busy seasons, began falling apart within weeks. Claire also stopped being the emotional support system for everyone. When Patricia called to talk about her book club drama or her concerns about Richard's blood pressure, Claire listened politely, but kept the conversations brief. No more hour-long phone calls where she played therapist, mediator, and cheerleader all at once. No more dropping everything to help with errands or provide advice or just be there. "You seem distant lately," Patricia said during one call, about 3 weeks into Claire's withdrawal. "Is something wrong? Are you feeling okay?" The audacity of the question almost made Claire laugh. "Are you feeling okay?" Asked by the woman who had helped her son hide an affair. Asked by the woman who had called her furniture. "Just busy," Claire replied, her voice pleasant and empty. "Work has been intense." It wasn't a lie. Claire had been taking on additional projects at the nonprofit, positioning herself for growth and advancement. She'd also been meeting with Karen, her lawyer, quietly building her exit strategy, documenting everything, protecting herself, planning her escape with the same precision she had once used to plan Daniel's success. At home, she stopped doing the little things that had always made their house a home. She still cooked, but simple meals instead of the elaborate dinners Daniel loved. No more braised short ribs that took 6 hours. No more homemade pasta. No more desserts made from scratch, just chicken and vegetables, pasta with jar sauce, salad from a bag. She stopped picking up his dry cleaning, stopped buying his favorite snacks at the grocery store, the particular brand of chips he liked, the specific beer he preferred, the protein bars he ate for breakfast. If he wanted them, he could buy them himself. She stopped planning date nights or surprise weekend getaways. For years, she had been the one keeping romance alive, booking restaurants, planning adventures, creating memories. She had done it because she loved him, but also because she had been trying so hard to hold together something that had already come apart. Daniel noticed, eventually. "You seem tired lately," he said one evening, about 6 weeks into Claire's silent exit. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, probably texting Sarah. "I am," she agreed, which was true. She was exhausted. Exhausted from years of trying. Exhausted from holding everything together. Exhausted from being taken for granted. "Maybe you should cut back on work. You're always so busy now." The audacity of it almost made her laugh. Cut back on work. The work that gave her purpose, that helped other women, that would soon give her the financial independence to leave. Cut back on that so she could do more for him. "My work is important," she said quietly. "I know, but so is our marriage. I feel like I barely see you anymore." Claire looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd loved since she was 21 years old. The man she'd built a life with. The man who was sleeping with someone named Sarah while his parents helped him hide it. The man who had just suggested she make herself smaller so he could feel more comfortable. "You see me every day, Daniel." "That's not what I mean. You're here, but you're not really here. You don't talk to me like you used to. You don't seem interested in anything I'm doing. It's like you're a ghost living in our house." A ghost, that was what he saw when he looked at her. Not a person with feelings, not a wife he had betrayed. A ghost. "I'll try to be more present," she lied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. But she didn't try. She pulled back further. She started going to bed earlier, claiming exhaustion. She started going to the gym, something she had always meant to do but never had time for when she was busy managing everyone else's life. She started reading again, devouring books the way she had in college. She started remembering who she had been before she had bent herself into shapes that fit his life. 3 months in, the cracks started showing in Daniel's business. Without Claire's careful management, he'd missed 2 major proposal deadlines. The lost contracts were starting to hurt, creating gaps in revenue that couldn't be easily filled. His accountant called, concerned about cash flow issues and the unusual pattern of clients not renewing. "I don't understand," Daniel said one evening, staring at spreadsheets in their home office, his face pale with stress. "Where did all these clients go? These were solid relationships. We've had some of them for years." Claire, reading in the living room with a cup of tea, didn't look up from her book. "Did you ask your sales team?" "They said the clients just didn't renew, but these were accounts you brought in. Your connections. Did they say anything to you? Did something happen?" "Relationships require maintenance," Claire said quietly, turning a page. "Maybe they felt neglected." Daniel didn't hear the double meaning. He was too stressed, too overwhelmed by the business problems he'd always had help managing but had never acknowledged needed managing at all. He thought success just happened. He didn't realize it was built, carefully and constantly, by someone working behind the scenes. The family dynamics were fracturing too. Without Claire orchestrating gatherings, the brothers rarely saw each other. Richard complained that the family was drifting apart, that his sons never called, that holidays were approaching, and no one was making plans. Patricia, who'd relied on Claire for emotional support and companionship, felt isolated. She tried calling her sons more often, but they were busy with their own lives and didn't have the patience or the emotional bandwidth that their sister-in-law had always shown. Lisa and Rebecca, the other wives, noticed Claire's absence most acutely. They'd always admired how she managed everything so gracefully, making it look effortless when it was anything but. Now, with her pulling back, they realized how much work she'd been doing to keep the family connected, functioning, thriving. The group chat she'd maintained went silent. The birthday celebrations she'd planned stopped happening. The secret Santa gift exchange she'd organized every Christmas didn't come together. The family cookbook she'd been compiling, filled with everyone's favorite recipes, sat unfinished. "Have you noticed Claire's been weird lately?" Lisa asked Rebecca during a rare coffee meetup that they'd arranged themselves, without Claire's usual coordination. "Definitely, she used to be so involved. Now she barely responds to texts, and when she does, it's just 1 or 2 words, no emojis, no warmth." "Do you think something's wrong? Should we ask her?" Rebecca shrugged, stirring her coffee with a frown. "Maybe she's just over being the family manager. Can you blame her? We all just let her do everything. We took advantage." "Do you think it's her and Daniel? James said they've seemed off lately." "Whatever it is, I don't think she wants to talk about it. And honestly, maybe we don't deserve to know." 4 months in, Claire got a promotion. Director of Regional Operations, overseeing 3 states. It came with a significant raise, a corner office, and the option to relocate to Portland, where the organization's headquarters was based. The position had come open unexpectedly when the previous director retired, and Claire's boss had practically begged her to take it. "You're the only person I trust with this," her boss had said. "You build things, you fix things, you make things better. That's what we need in Portland." Claire accepted immediately. She didn't hesitate. She didn't agonize. She didn't consult Daniel. She just said yes, signed the paperwork, and felt something like hope bloom in her chest for the first time in months. She told Daniel over dinner, another simple meal of pasta and salad. She set down her fork, took a sip of water, and said the words that would change everything. "I got a promotion, Director of Regional Operations." Daniel looked up from his phone, interest flickering across his face. "That's great, honey. Congratulations. What does it involve?" "Overseeing operations in 3 states. It's a significant expansion of my current role." "That sounds like a lot of work, but you can handle it. You're good at that stuff." You're good at that stuff. Years of building her career, of developing expertise, of making a difference, reduced to that stuff. "It's based in Portland," she continued, watching his face carefully. "Portland," he repeated, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "That's 3 hours away." "It's an incredible opportunity." "But what about us? What about my business? What about the family?" The family, his family, that he expected her to manage while he carried on with Sarah. "Your business is here, mine is expanding." She met his eyes steadily. "I was thinking I could commute on weekends or you could visit me. Lots of couples make it work." "Claire, this is crazy. We can't just live in different cities. We're married." The word felt like a joke. Married. What did that word even mean to him? "Why not? You're always working anyway. You won't even notice I'm gone." The irony of that statement hung in the air between them. Daniel would notice. He just didn't realize yet how much he depended on her, how much of his life she held together with invisible threads. "I can't believe you're making this decision without really discussing it with me." Claire took a sip of wine, savoring the taste. She'd opened a good bottle, one they'd been saving. Might as well drink it now. "I'm discussing it now." "No, you're telling me. There's a difference." You're right, there is. She paused. The same way you told me about working late every Thursday instead of asking if I minded. His face went pale. What? Nothing, forget it. I start in 6 weeks. That weekend, at what had become an irregular and poorly attended family dinner, Claire announced her news. The table went silent. Patricia's face fell, actual grief crossing her features. Portland, but that's so far away. How will we see you? You'll visit. I'll visit. It'll be fine. Richard frowned, setting down his water glass with a thump. What about Daniel? What about the family? Claire, you're the one who holds us all together. There it was, the truth, spoken out loud. She held them together. She did the work. And they had repaid her by helping Daniel betray her. Daniel has his business here, and you all have each other. You'll be fine. But who's going to organize everything? Patricia asked, the question revealing more than she intended. Not how will we stay close, but who will do the work. Claire smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're all very capable people. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. James and Connor exchanged glances. Their wives looked down at their plates. Daniel's jaw was tight, a muscle jumping in his cheek. After dinner, Richard pulled Daniel aside. Claire watched from the kitchen window as father and son talked in the backyard, their conversation clearly heated. Richard was gesturing emphatically, his face red. Daniel kept shaking his head, his shoulders hunched defensively. When they came back inside, Daniel's face was stormy, his eyes avoiding hers. On the drive home, he was silent, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Claire didn't try to fill the quiet. She looked out the window at the familiar streets of the town where she'd lived for 5 years and felt nothing but relief that she'd soon be leaving. It wasn't until they were in bed that he finally spoke, his voice rough in the darkness. My dad thinks you're leaving me. Claire stared at the ceiling, at the shadows cast by the streetlight outside. Are you asking if I am? Are you? I took a job, Daniel. That's not the same as leaving you. Isn't it, though? You're moving 3 hours away. You've been distant for months. You barely talk to my family anymore. You're never home. When you are home, you're somewhere else mentally. You look at me like I'm a stranger. Maybe I'm just seeing you clearly for the first time. What's that supposed to mean? Claire turned to look at him. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, she could see the fear in his eyes. Good. Let him be afraid. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt when she found that lipstick stain. Why would I leave? She asked softly. I'm too invested in this family, remember. Where would I even go? Daniel's face went pale, the color draining away like water. What are you talking about? I never said that. Never mind, I'm taking the job in Portland. I'm moving in 6 weeks. You can come with me or you can stay here. I honestly don't care anymore. Behind her, she felt him lie awake for a long time, his breathing ragged. She didn't care about that either. She had stopped caring weeks ago, maybe months ago. Maybe she had stopped caring the moment she saw that coral pink smudge and realized her marriage was a lie. The next week, Claire started moving her things to Portland. Not everything, just enough to set up an apartment, enough to build a new life. She rented a small but nice place in the Pearl District, an area she'd always loved. Big windows, exposed brick, a view of the city. It felt like hope. She didn't hide her preparations, but she didn't announce them either. She just did it, packing boxes on weekends, hearing movers, setting up utilities. Daniel watched it all happen with the numb expression of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. Daniel's business continued to decline. The cash flow problems became serious. Without Claire's careful management of client relationships and project timelines, things were slipping through the cracks. He had to let 2 employees go, then 3 more. The office that had once buzzed with energy and growth felt hollow and defeated. His stress levels skyrocketed. He started drinking more, sleeping less, snapping at people over small things. The woman he'd been seeing, Sarah, apparently wasn't interested in a struggling entrepreneur. Claire never saw evidence of her again after that conversation in the study. No more coral pink lipstick. No more unexplained charges. Sarah had disappeared like morning mist, probably into the arms of someone whose company wasn't circling the drain. Richard tried to help with the business, but he'd been retired for years and didn't understand the tech industry. His advice was outdated and often made things worse. He suggested cold calling and print advertisements and networking at the Chamber of Commerce, things that had worked in the 1980s but were useless now. Patricia suggested Daniel ask Claire for help, since she'd always been so good at organizing things, at making connections, at fixing problems. "She's busy with her own career now," Daniel said bitterly, staring at another spreadsheet of declining revenues. "Well, maybe if you'd appreciated her more when she was helping you," Patricia started, guilt making her voice sharp. "That's not helpful, Patricia," Richard cut her off. But it was the truth, and they all knew it. The truth sat in the room like a third person, silent and accusatory. 6 months after Claire discovered the lipstick stain, she was living in Portland full-time. She came back to visit once or twice a month, staying in their house but feeling like a guest. The house she had decorated, had made into a home, now felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. She was pleasant, cordial but distant, like a friend you used to be close to but had grown apart from, like someone who was being polite to strangers. Daniel's company was struggling to stay afloat. He'd lost half his clients and couldn't seem to win new ones. His proposals were sloppy, missing the details that used to make them shine. The details Claire used to add. Without her network, without her organizational skills, without her silent support holding everything together, the business was failing. He was failing. The family had fractured too. Sunday dinners were rare and awkward when they did happen. James and Connor barely spoke to each other anymore without Claire there to facilitate, to ask the right questions, to find the common ground. Patricia had fallen into a depression, missing the daughter-in-law who'd been more attentive than her own sons, more caring than her husband. Richard's blood pressure was up. Stress from watching his son's business fail, and his family fall apart, and knowing it was partly his fault. Lisa and Rebecca had tried to reach out to Claire several times, but the warmth that used to be there had cooled to something polite and distant. Claire was friendly but busy, always busy. They'd lost not just a sister-in-law but a friend, a confidant, the person who had made family gatherings bearable and sometimes even fun. They were only now realizing what that meant, what they had lost, what they had taken for granted. It was Connor who finally said it out loud, during one of the rare family gatherings. They were sitting around the table, picking at Patricia's pot roast that somehow didn't taste the same anymore. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. "We took her for granted," Connor said, setting down his fork. Everyone looked at him. "Claire, we all took her for granted. She held this whole family together and we just let her do it. We didn't appreciate it. We didn't help. We didn't even notice until she stopped. And Daniel," he looked at his brother with something like disappointment. "Whatever you did, whatever happened, it drove her away. And now look at us. The business is failing. The family barely talks. None of us know how to do any of the things she used to do because we never paid attention. We thought it just happened, like magic, like it was easy." "I didn't do anything," Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. The lie sat bitter on his tongue. James shook his head, anger flickering across his face. "Don't lie. We all know something happened. Dad, you and Mom know too. I heard you talking about it months ago, telling Daniel to be careful. Well, he wasn't careful enough, was he? And now we've lost the best thing that ever happened to this family." Patricia started crying, quiet tears running down her face. "I miss her. I miss talking to her. She was the only one who really listened. The only one who remembered things, who cared about things." "She was more than that," Lisa said quietly. "She was the heart of this family, and we broke it. We broke her. And then we were surprised when she left." Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked out of the room, out of the house, into the backyard. No one followed him. They sat in the ruins of what Claire had built and wondered how they hadn't seen it falling apart until it was too late. 7 months after the lipstick stain, Claire filed for divorce. The papers were delivered to Daniel at his office, what was left of it. He downsized to a small space with just 5 employees, desperately trying to keep the company alive through sheer force of will. He called her immediately, his voice frantic, raw with desperation. "Claire, please, we can fix this. Whatever I did, whatever happened, we can work through it. I'll do anything." "Can we?" she asked calmly, her voice steady as stone. "Can we work through you cheating on me? Can we work through your parents knowing about it and helping you hide it? Can we work through the fact that you all assumed I was too weak, too invested, too pathetic to leave? Can we work through you calling me furniture?" The silence on the other end was deafening. She could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven. "You knew," he finally whispered. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you confront me? We could have worked through it then." "Because I realized something, Daniel. Actions speak louder than words. You showed me who you were. Your family showed me what I meant to them. I didn't need to scream or cry or fight. I just needed to stop propping up a life that didn't value me. I needed to stop being the glue and see what happened when I let go. I value you. Claire, I value you so much. I didn't realize how much until you were gone. The business, the family, everything is falling apart without you. That's not my problem anymore." "Please," his voice broke. "I'll do anything. I ended things with her months ago. I'll go to counseling. I'll move to Portland. I'll sell the business. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't do this." Claire closed her eyes. A part of her, a small part that remembered loving him, felt sorry for him. But a larger part, the part that had been broken and had rebuilt itself stronger, knew better. "You didn't love me enough when it mattered, Daniel. You loved what I did for you, the connections I brought, the problems I solved, the family I managed, the life I built. But me, the actual person, you took that for granted. You thought I'd always be there no matter how you treated me. You thought I was furniture. Something useful, necessary, but not worth really seeing. That's not true. I love you. I've always loved you. Maybe you loved your version of me, the version that made your life easier. But the real me, the person with feelings and needs and worth, you forgot she existed. You all did. I'm saying it now. I see you now. Please, Claire, don't do this." "I already did it, Daniel. 7 months ago, when I decided I deserved better. When I decided to stop making myself smaller so everyone else could feel bigger. The divorce papers are just making it official." "What about our history? 7 years, Claire. That has to mean something." "It does mean something. It means I spent 7 years building a life that only I valued. It means I spent 7 years being taken for granted. It means I'm not wasting another day on people who see me as furniture." She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. She felt something close to peace. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Claire got half of everything, which wasn't much considering the company was now worth a fraction of what it had been. But she didn't need his money. Her new position paid well, and she'd been smart with her own investments. She'd never been dependent on him, not really. She just let him believe she was. In Portland, Claire built a new life. She made new friends, people who valued her for who she was, not what she could do for them. She dated casually, nothing serious yet, but she was open to the possibility. She threw herself into her work and found deep satisfaction in helping other women find their strength, in building programs that made real differences in real lives. She went to therapy, working through the betrayal and the pain and the anger. She learned about patterns, about codependency, about the difference between helping and enabling. She learned to set boundaries, to say no, to put herself first without guilt. One evening, almost a year after she'd left, Claire received a message from Patricia. It was long, rambling, full of apologies and regrets. Patricia admitted that she'd known about Daniel's affair and had made a terrible choice in protecting him instead of Claire. She talked about how the family had fallen apart, how they all missed her, how nothing had been the same since she left. She begged for forgiveness, for understanding, for a chance to make things right. Claire read the message twice, sitting in her apartment with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. She thought about responding, about offering forgiveness or at least acknowledging the apology. But in the end, she didn't. Some things couldn't be fixed with words. Some betrayals ran too deep. Some bridges once burned were meant to stay ash. She deleted the message and went back to the book she was reading, a memoir about resilience and starting over. Outside her apartment window, the city lights of Portland twinkled like stars, like possibilities, like promises of a future that was entirely her own. Meanwhile, back in their hometown, Daniel sat in his nearly empty office. The company had declared bankruptcy the week before. The dream he'd built that Claire had helped him build was gone. He was looking for jobs now, sending out resumes, trying to figure out what came next. His relationship with his parents was strained, marked by resentment and blame. His brothers barely called. The woman he'd cheated with, Sarah, had long since moved on to someone else, someone more successful, someone who appreciated her. Richard's health had declined significantly. The stress of watching everything fall apart, of knowing his role in it, had taken its toll. He'd had a minor heart attack 2 months ago. He was on medication now, following a strict diet, but the damage was done. Patricia spent her days in a fog of regret, missing the daughter-in-law she'd loved like her own child, but had failed to protect when it mattered most. She tried calling her sons more often, but they were distant, polite but cold. They blamed her partly for what had happened, for choosing Daniel over Claire, for being part of the betrayal. James and Connor had both distanced themselves from the family drama, focusing on their own lives. They called on holidays, visited rarely. The close-knit family that Claire had worked so hard to maintain had scattered like dandelion seeds in the wind. Lisa and Rebecca stayed in touch with Claire occasionally, sending texts on birthdays, liking her posts on social media. But it wasn't the same. It would never be the same. They understood why. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some trust once broken can't be repaired. Daniel often thought about that conversation in his father's study, the one Claire had overheard. "She won't leave. She loves us too much." He'd been so wrong, so catastrophically, devastatingly wrong. Claire had left, not with anger or drama or scenes. She'd left quietly, removing herself piece by piece until one day she was simply gone. And in her absence, they'd all learned a terrible truth. They'd never really known her strength. They'd mistaken her kindness for weakness, her investment for dependence, her love for obligation. She hadn't needed them. They'd needed her. And by the time they realized it, it was far too late. On a Saturday afternoon, Daniel drove past their old house. He'd sold it in the divorce. A new family lived there now. He could see children playing in the yard, a swing set that hadn't been there before, flowers in the garden that Claire had started. Life going on without him. The world turning, indifferent to his regrets. He drove by the coffee shop where he and Claire used to go every Sunday morning, back when things were good. Or what he'd thought was good. Maybe it had never been as good for her as it was for him. Maybe she'd been carrying the weight of their life together alone, and he'd just never noticed. He'd been too busy enjoying the results to question the process. His phone rang. His father, probably calling to share more bad news or deliver another lecture about responsibility. Daniel didn't answer. He was tired of lectures, tired of regrets, tired of everything. Tired of living in the ruins of what he'd destroyed. What he wanted was a chance to go back, to do it all differently, to appreciate Claire when he had her, to be worthy of the life she'd built for them, to choose her the way he'd promised to on their wedding day. But that chance was gone. That life was gone. Claire was gone. All he had now were the ruins of everything she'd left behind when she stopped holding it together, and the devastating knowledge that he had no one to blame but himself. Miles away in Portland, Claire was having brunch with friends. Real friends, the kind who asked about her dreams and listened to her answers. The kind who celebrated her successes without jealousy and supported her through challenges without judgment. The kind who saw her as a whole person, not just what she could do for them. Someone asked her about her ex-husband, if she ever regretted leaving, if she ever thought about going back. Claire thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the 7 years they'd spent together, the good times and the bad, the dreams they'd shared and the ones he'd crushed, the person she'd been and the person she'd become. Then she smiled, genuine and real. "No," she said simply. "I regret staying as long as I did, but leaving, that was the best decision I ever made." And she meant it, every word, every syllable. Because Claire had learned something important in the ruins of her marriage. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't fix relationships where you're the only one trying. You can't build a life on a foundation of being taken for granted. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away, not with anger or vengeance, but with dignity and purpose. Let them see what life looks like without you. Let them understand, too late, what they had and lost. Let them live with the consequences of their choices. Claire had done exactly that. She'd removed herself from the equation and watched everything else fall apart. Not because she wanted revenge, though there was a certain satisfaction in it, but because she refused to keep holding together a life that didn't value her. Because she recognized that her worth wasn't measured by how much she could do for others, but by how she treated herself. She'd walked away from the wreckage and built something better, something that was truly hers, something that no one could take from her because it wasn't based on what she could do for others, but on who she was as a person. A person deserving of respect, of honesty, of love that didn't come with conditions. In the end, that was the real victory, not the divorce or the failed business or the fractured family left behind. The real victory was Claire finding herself again, reclaiming her worth, and building a life that honored both. The real victory was learning that she was enough, all by herself, without anyone else's validation. She raised her glass of mimosa to her friends, to her new life, to the future stretching out before her full of possibility and promise. To new beginnings, she said. They all clinked glasses and drank deeply, laughing about something one of them had said, planning their next adventure, living in the present instead of drowning in the past. And somewhere in a city 3 hours away, Daniel sat alone in a small apartment, finally understanding everything he'd lost. But understanding, like regret, changes nothing. The past is written. The choices are made. The consequences are real. Claire had made hers. She'd chosen herself, and she was never, ever looking back. She had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the quietest exit is the loudest statement. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. And sometimes the greatest love you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who make you feel like you're not enough. Claire was enough. She'd always been enough. She just needed to believe it herself. And now she did.